Hi and welcome to Illuminations with Tiina and Fi. I'm Tiina.
And I'm Fi.
Hi Fi.
Hi, Tina.
Hello. Hello, hello. Today we're going to continue our theme of love. And today we're looking at loving oneself or self-love. And I know, Fi, that you wanted to kick this one off in your own particular way. So stage is yours.
Thank you, Tina. Well, this is going to be an interesting session as we have talked about this. So I thought, if that's okay, I would start with probably one of my favourite poems and life-saving poems. So I'm going to read it. So I'm going to hold that here so it doesn't get in the way. So this is by Mary Oliver, and many people out there will have heard it, or they may not have done. So one day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though the melancholy was terrible, it was already late, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognised as your own, that you kept company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. So I chose that because I thought, is that what self-love is?
Is it?
So, and it's bizarre, I've got something by Danielle Laporte on the wall at the moment, which how people perceive me used to seem colossally important. Now it's only a detail, which is not to say it's unimportant. I like being understood, but external opinions don't govern my choices like they used to. I do. So feels to me there's maybe a continuum of love here, of self-love or loving oneself. And it feels like that there's a side that is around loving oneself enough to value one's own opinion, to value looking after your own self, as in self-care. And that whole thing with Mary Oliver was from someone who has come from a home where the language of love is caring acts. I can give quite a lot, and that can end up with some resentful martyr we talked about. So I wonder if the self-love and the self-care is part of what it means to love oneself. And I picked out something by David Hamilton, who wrote I Love Me, The Science of Self-Love. And that's what I love about him, because he's a neuroscientist and he does it from that perspective. But he had a lovely idea, which was not loving yourself instead of others, not even loving yourself as well as others. It's even about not mentioning others. It's just about loving yourself, full stop. And this then starts to flip into the deeper end, might as well bring it all in, which is when I work with clients and we get to the point where we start to look at beliefs and shifting beliefs. Often the new belief we come up with, for them to say that belief, which is usually a really positive belief, empowering belief about themselves, to get them to say it into a mirror to themselves is really a big step. The mirror work by Louise Hay, obviously. So I rest that out there. Any thoughts, Tina?
quite a lot to take in there and have thoughts on. The only thing that kind of sticks out for me is self-compassion is also a very, very important ingredient in that pot of self-love. I think it's I find it quite strange that there's so much resistance from some people for the concept of self-love, and that it's something dirty and bad. That surprises me. And in the famous saying, you can't love someone else until you love yourself, and you're kind of stuck with yourself for the rest of your life. I mean, this is kind of a relationship that you don't get out of. So yes, all of those ingredients in that pot of self-love are so important, because why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, and you're right. And as you know, I had a situation with someone I knew, and we had quite a discussion around this, and the person was quite, calling it quite Western thinking, this self-love. But it is interesting, because since then I've done a lot of mindfulness experience and grown to understand, loving kindness meditation is a loving kindness towards yourself primarily, and then towards others. So it's not Western, it's quite an Eastern perspective. Maybe that's the challenge. And also I think it's really bizarre, because I did a bit of research, just for this one, because this one is quite an interesting one. I think it will rumble around for both of us, in that when I searched on TED Talks, I couldn't find one about self-love. It's interesting, because I thought, I'll have a look. I mean, I know Matthew Ricard talks about happiness and self-compassion, but it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's the essence of all of it, I mean, even Susan Jeffers, I looked her, she came to me, she talks about the higher self and the lower self. And when you're in higher self, inside you is a place filled with joy, creativity, intuition, peace, power, love, and all good things. I call it the higher self. Whenever you're in this place, your confidence soars and all seems right with the world. And the lower self is, whenever in this place your confidence disappears. Well, that sounds like self-love to me. I don't know what you think.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And also, yeah. Go ahead.
I think thoughts of joy, creativity, power, peace, love, you are in the world of higher self. So maybe this was written obviously years ago, this book, isn't it? 27 years or something. So maybe the concept of self-love in those days, as you say, was still a bit of not so flavoursome.
It seems like, well, some people think that if you love yourself, then you are totally obsessed with yourself, and there's no space for other people, and that you become very narcissistic almost. But narcissism is not, really loving yourself, because it's something totally different. But it's like, if you flip it a little bit and kind of think of, okay, so if loving oneself means that you're totally obsessed by yourself and to the exclusion of other people, then that should also mean that if you love someone else, you are also totally obsessed with them to the exclusion of everybody else. And we would not say that. We would clearly say, you love someone else, that's beautiful, and if it goes into that obsessive love, then it's not love anymore, then it's something else. And maybe it's like the narcissism of others then.
Yes.
So it's interesting how we're so quick to condemn the self-love, but then loving others is something very beautiful. And well, if you start comparing, then
yes,
yes,
and it's Sorry, Tiina, you think?
No, I was finished.
You've just rumbled something in my head there, because I did look on Google Trends about self-love, and when I did loving oneself, self-love was it kind of was high and low, really. But when I did loving oneself, narcissism came up as well. So there's obviously a perspective around that quite closely knitted together. But I think you're right. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, is how one loves oneself, is then how one can love another, not self-obsessive. And I think that's what David Hampton talks about. And for me, it reminds me, when on the aeroplanes they say with the gas mask, you have to put it on the children, on yourself first, and then on the children. And Hamilton, he talks about self-esteem, self-love, and interchanges them, even though he says they're quite different. And I used to do a lot of work with young people through a program by a woman called Jenny Mosley. And she always made it clear that if we didn't have our own self-esteem intact as adults engaging with children, then it's very challenging for us to enhance the self-esteem of them. And so when David Hamilton in here, he talks about those 3 stages, which I'm not enough, I've had enough, and I am enough. And it's interesting, I've had enough is when there's bursts of anger. And when I look back over my life, I can feel that. That's what it feels like when I look back. I've had enough, you know. And to move into the stage of I am enough, which is self-love. I am enough. I am worthy of all that is coming to me. He says, you know, there's acceptance and peace, more laughter. You're willing to share your weaknesses more. You know, that's quite a lovely place to be. And I personally feel that I'm more and more moving into that. Definitely. You know, I don't personalize stuff so much. I'm able to, you know, loving compassion for other people as well as for myself. I think you've hit it right on the head with that.
I think also when you feel good within yourself, then you have more to give to others. You know, whereas if you feel really bad within yourself, then you have less to give to others. And again, like with the gas mask example, you know, if you just give to others, at some point you don't have anything else to give eventually. You know, you have to get something as well. And that's what you kind of remind parents about, like new mums, and you know, you've got lots of kids and you just want them to be the focus of your life, but somewhere you need to get the energy so that you have energy to give to your kids. So yeah. So what will our questions be this time, Fi, for our audience?
Well, I suppose it's the breadth. I suppose we're thinking about, you know, what self-love might be. So I suppose, you know, what does self-love look like for you, as in people out there? And if you were a person who had enough self-love, you know, imagine whom you could be. Which kind of really touches me, actually. That touches me. Yes, and self-care, this whole self-care, emotional, physical, fitting in with that. So I think it's about what does self-love look like for you?
Yeah, okay. What does self-love look like for you?
Even let's do feel like for the kinesthetics, you know, what does it look like for you? And how do you know when you've got self-love? How do you know? Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. Well, there's some intense kind of talking there for a while. It's a really huge subject, as our subjects tend to be. Maybe we'll come back to this one at some point. Thanks for your time today, Fi.
Thank you, Tiina.
See you next time.
Next time.
Bye.
Bye.